Thanks for listening to Creative Control. While I have you here, please consider supporting Youth Empowerment and Support Services, otherwise known as YES. Based in Edmonton, Alberta, YES provides immediate and low-barrier overnight and day shelter, temporary supportive housing, and individualized wraparound supports for young people aged 15 to 24. They work collaboratively within a network of care focused on the prevention of youth homelessness by providing youth with the necessary supports to stabilize their housing, improve their well-being, build life skills, connect with community, and avoid re-entry into homelessness. Learn more about how to donate or otherwise support YES by visiting yess.org.
Hi, this is Mark Lee Morrison from the podcast Low Profile. I live in Olympia, Washington with my wife and 2 daughters, and I support Vish Khanna's Creative Control on Patreon because I appreciate his journalistic integrity. Vish talks with a lot of artists I care about, and he never asks any boring questions. I love hearing his interviews, and as a Patreon supporter, I get to hear even more of them. If you enjoy Creative Control too, I implore you to join me as a sustaining contributor.
To make your flexible monthly donation to Creative Control, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control today.
Kathleen Hanna is an iconic musician, singer, producer, artist, songwriter, activist, and author who is currently based in Pasadena, California. Originally from Portland, Oregon, Hanna has been the lead singer and co-founder of hugely impactful punk bands like Bikini Kill, The Julie Ruin, and Le Tigre, whose work is based in feminist empowerment, but also confronts inequality and marginalization of all kinds, and has inspired generations of outspoken musicians and advocates for decency across the world. On May 14th, 2024, the HarperCollins imprint Echo published Hanna's remarkable memoir. It's called Rebel Girl, My Life as a Feminist Punk, and it prompted Kathleen to join me for a talk about why she wrote this book and what that experience was like, what she learned about her own workaholism and setting boundaries, trauma and therapy, how punk orthodoxy led her into a painful exile, the actual material conditions of being known as an activist icon, prescience and hindsight, how the writing in Rebel Girl relates to the depiction of her in the 2013 documentary The Punk Singer, forgiveness, friendship, and self-awareness, a shout-out to her husband and previous guest on this show, Adam Horovitz, for being a generously supportive family man, and much more. A part of the Entertainment One network with the support of listeners like you who follow and subscribe to this listener-supported and donor-driven podcast, spread the word about it, leave nice reviews and ratings on your podcast platforms, and make flexible monthly donations at patreon.com/Creative Control, which is the primary and most reliable way for a podcaster like me to make a living these days. All amounts are welcome, of course. There are different tiers. In particular, I want to tell you that the $6 American a month subscription means you can access every single episode of this show in its entirety, and that's not the case without that subscription. Every other episode is available for free in its entirety, but some are only accessible in their entirety via that $6 a month subscription. So if you can afford to do it and you feel like supporting the show as well, please join me and subscribe at patreon.com/Creative Control. Thank you so much. With additional support from Blackbird Music, a bricks and mortar record store with locations in Edmonton and Calgary, Alberta, and a website where you can order things shipped to your house. That's blackbird.ca. Say you want to order every record by Bikini Kill or Le Tigre or The Julie Ruin, for example. Well, head over to blackbird.ca and type in what you're looking for, and if they can get it for you, they will. It's just that simple. Plus, in-kind support from independent businesses like Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee, respectively, in Guelph, Ontario, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario. This is episode 868 of Creative Control, featuring one of my all-time heroes and someone I've wanted on this show since I basically started it. Kathleen Hanna is here with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Please enjoy this excerpt from our conversation, and to hear the whole thing, again, subscribe to the show at patreon.com/creativecontrol. Let's get into this, though. What prompted you to actually write this book? Can we start there?
Yeah, sure. You know, it's like there's the origin story that I keep telling over and over, and I don't want to tell you the same thing I tell everybody.
Appreciate
that.
So
I'm trying to think of a new ways to phrase it. I really did feel like in the opening paragraph, I say something like, I'm Rapunzel gone horribly wrong, and if I don't tell this story, hair is going to grow out of my mouth and start choking me. And it's funny because in the original version, which I started writing many, many years before, I started writing an introduction to a book, and it was before I was diagnosed with Lyme disease. And the original version was, I feel like a tick full of blood, and if I don't tell this story, I'm going to explode. And like, then 5 years later, I got diagnosed with Lyme disease, and I was like, whoa, somewhere in my bones, I must have known. But, you know, I've been writing stuff off and on for a long time, like thinking I would do this, and then illness kind of laid me up from that, being on the road, trying to spend more time with my family and be a person, be a happy person, which is like a very difficult thing to achieve. But I was leaving New York and coming to California to be near my mom. And I really wanted to leave old Kathleen behind. And like, I have this whole thing that I'm like California Kathleen now. And I'm like so mellow and chill. And like, I'm chiller than you. And you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, whatever, but I'm not. I'm still very like, I have to be doing stuff at all times and deal with my workaholism. And like, I love working, but I want to start addressing some of that stuff in my life. And I can't do it if I don't grapple with my past. And that includes the joyful memories and like remembering those things and not just focusing on the bad. But, I couldn't leave my past behind unless I actually examined it. And so I just started doing that, and that turned into a book.
Yeah. I know that in my own family, my workaholism, if that's a word, comes from my mother. And I've realized now, or I'm starting to think, and I'm trying not to overthink it because I want to keep working, but I'm starting to think maybe my workaholism is me trying to keep anxiety at bay a little bit. Do you have that?
I was trying to keep trauma. Like processing trauma at bay.
Yeah.
And I think obviously that involves anxiety. And part of the anxiety is if I look into this, I'm going to get stuck in it. I'll never get out. It'll be like quicksand. Or, you know, if I start crying, I'll never stop. But I found a really great therapist who helped me kind of take things off in bite-sized chunks so that I can actually process it. And that's been one of the really amazing byproducts of this book was I finally reached out for help about some things that I hadn't been able to reach out for help about. And I have, you know, put boundaries on my work week. It ends on Friday. Yeah. And I don't work on the weekends, you know? So like, even just doing that or saying 5 o'clock, I mean, I couldn't do that when writing the book. I just had to write. But for press and other stuff, I've just been like, okay, here's the time I can do it. And this is as much as I can take.
I need those. I'm going to ask you about those maybe later, off the mic someday maybe. But yeah, I need those boundaries myself. You were saying something there, and it made me think of how for some of us you are, and don't take this the wrong way, a revolutionary. Oh God, I don't mean to overflatter you or make you blush, but I think for some of us you are a revolutionary. And as you recount some of these stories and these memories, I wonder if you came upon any level of prescience about the way things are now in the terms of the work that you and your friends did and the way we kind of function. It's a bit of a broad question, but do you know where I'm coming from?
What does prescience mean? I forget.
Prescience would be like you say or do something that hasn't happened yet, and it's sort of predictive. Like you do something that at the time maybe people aren't paying attention to, and then in the end, people are like, whoa, Kathleen Hanna and Bikini Kill or Latigra, they were onto something there that we all kind of do now. And I think some of the people I gravitate towards in punk were like, yeah, you can just logically do, it's 1983, but this is logically how we can put a punk network together. And at the time, people were like, you fucking idiots, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not going to make any money. Lo and behold, we have a whole independent infrastructure now And the thing that was mocked is proven to have viability. Sorry, again, I'm not talking about you. This may not be specific enough to your circumstances.
Oh, no, it totally is.
Okay. So do you feel like, do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I just wish that I could have used my prescience to like play the stock market or like put bets down on horses.
Yeah.
So right now I could be like, donating to, end the genocide in Gaza. That would be nice if I.
Yes.
Anyways, but I do see that, and to be fair to myself and to be just honest, in the 90s when we were taking all kinds of crap, one of the things that kept me going, besides the girls in the front row, like sobbing while singing our lyrics, was, and when I say girls, I mean 5 girls. It was that the more hate we got, the way that I dealt with it was saying, if you weren't getting this hate, you wouldn't be doing the right thing. If people weren't so the fact that men were so threatened by the idea of expanding punk to include feminism, and then the actual day-to-day cumulative sexual harassment that we received at every venue we played at as a result of that, including into Le Tigre in the 2000s. Yes, it was hurtful. It was really hard to deal with. I'm still kind of processing it. But at the same time, the thing that kept me going was saying, this matters. This mission, I'm on a mission. This matters. I'm not going to let people's nonsense pull me off of my path. And luckily I had mentors like MacKaye in my life who, really validated me in that and was like, this stuff will come and go. Just keep your head down and do the work. And, just little things like that would keep me going. And so, yeah, there was a thing where I felt pretty upset when Bikini Kill ended. And it was like, it just felt like everybody was so mad at us all the time. I feel like history has been really flattened and musical history has been really flattened so that it's like, oh, they came on the scene. They were these angry, empowered feminists and everybody was so excited. And like, no, they weren't. They wanted to kill us. Like it was not pleasant at all. And it was a very difficult, I wanted to be a musician and I wanted to make sure that the people who I wanted to hear my music showed up to the shows and had a place to stand. It's kind of as simple as that. And yet I felt like I was in like Donkey Kong, like they kept throwing barrels at me, and I kept jumping over them. And now I've reunited with both bands and I get to go on tours that don't feel like that. And there are still guys who come to our shows and grope women. There's still stuff we have to deal with. But at the same time, I almost felt like I was being kicked out of the punk scene in the 90s. Like you're a sellout or, whatever. And it was very frustrating having no money and being called a sellout. And, just because occasionally we do interesting things like get to work with one of my heroes, Joan Jett, or getting to work with Kim Gordon. And it's like, that would make us a sellout. And I was just like, I can't take this anymore. And just the death threats and everything, I just couldn't take it. And then I left and people were like, how dare you leave us? You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, this is like a bad boyfriend scenario where it's like they treat you like total garbage and they cheat on you and they yell at you and they're awful and they make fun of everything you do. And then finally you leave and they walk around town telling everybody that you just left them out of nowhere. That's kind of what it felt like when I left Bikini Kill. And so it was really exciting to start Le Tigre and to start setting more boundaries. It didn't work in terms of the sexism, obviously, or the homophobia that JD faced, but it did start to get better. And then slowly it got a lot better. So I've gotten to see kind of both sides, and to be welcomed back with such open arms has been incredibly, like, I hate to say healing, but healing. It's been really healing to be embraced by people, from 12 to 80. Like our audience is really intergenerational, truly.
Hey, thanks for listening to Creative Control, as always. As you may have heard me mention, I recently lost my day job, and I've had a few conversations with people since who've said, you had a day job? I thought your podcast was your day job. When I explained why it hasn't been my day job to a friend, he suggested I should share some of this information with people like you listening right now. So, in short, unless they have some giant exclusive $1 million contract, podcasters are not paid to make stuff by companies like Apple and Spotify. Podcasters do not make any money from streaming royalties. Ad revenue is dependent on a certain threshold of downloads each month, and even if your show is accessed 30,000 times a month, the income you get is actually really minimal. So podcasters like me usually make time in our lives to support our communities and our interests to make these shows, and our most reliable source of income for this work is in fact crowdfunding. In my case, it's my Patreon. So if you'd like to receive ad-free episodes earlier than everyone else, regular newsletters and blog posts, bonus audio content, and support my work, quite literally, please visit patreon.com/creativecontrol today. Thank you so much for listening to this excerpt from a recent episode of Creative Control with Vish Khanna. Every other Creative Control episode is only accessible to Patreon supporters. This is one of them. So please visit patreon.com/creativecontrol, become a subscriber today, and you won't miss a single episode in its entirety. There are links in the show notes to take you right there. So if you're able to, please do support this show and enjoy hours and hours of content. Thank you.